Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on three things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Hey everyone, Bryan Whittington with this episode of the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. I'm talking with Darrell Amy, who might be the only person more all over the place than I am. He is an author, a speaker. He is a dual podcast host of both the Revenue Growth podcast and Selling from the Heart podcast. He's a co-host there. He's an author of Revenue Growth Engine. I think he washes dishes, and I don't know what else he does, but he does everything. So today we're going to be talking about how do we go from, we think that we have product market fit. We're pretty sure of that. We're a mid-sized company, small to mid-sized company. We've started to build up our sales team. So how do we go from somewhat built out, I think we can sell stuff, to a well-oiled, scalable selling machine? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So with that said, Darrell, welcome to the show.
Bryan, it's great to be here. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yeah, we have no idea where this is going because we were going on different paths throughout the entry into this. So we can go all over the place, but we know that we're going to have a lot of great stuff. So grab your notebook and pen and let's get to it. So I guess the first question, Darrell, is why in the world should we listen to you? What makes you such an expert on how to scale up a newly minted selling machine?
I'm glad you asked. I am a sales junkie with a marketing degree, and I've been in sales and sales development now for 29 years, mostly in the business to business space in the tech world. And about 18 years ago, I started a sales training company, Bryan, and my very first client said, that training was great, but our marketing doesn't say anything about it. Do you build websites, was the question. And being entrepreneurial, and that my first client, I said, yes, sir, we do that. I'd actually built a website for a nonprofit and also for my church. But I took that, and over the last 2 decades, what's been very interesting and why I think you should listen to me is I've had one foot in the sales world and one foot in the marketing world, and bring the perspective of both of those together to help companies develop an engine to scale their business faster.
Well, let's break that up into 3 segments then. Let's hit that sales, let's hit that marketing, and let's hit that as scaling the engine. How would you say, you from a marketing background, you came from your degree as marketing, that was your discipline. Mm-hmm. So if you are put on your marketing hat and you'd like to talk to salespeople, what are the need to know must-haves that every salesperson should know right now? Because there's personal branding, you have to know all of this technology to be able to do this. The integration of sales and marketing is combining, and we have that word smarketing floating around there. So you, from that expert of marketing, what would you say to the sales team are the need to know that they have to have?
Yeah, well, to all of my sales friends with my marketing hat on, I would say the very first thing that is so critical to understand is to understand what your buyers are actually buying. And I'm a firm believer, Bryan, that buyers don't buy products and services. They buy the outcomes those products and services deliver. And it reminds me of Theodore Levitt. Ted Levitt was the father of modern marketing. He would walk into his Harvard Business School class on the first day of Marketing 101. And if you were teaching Sales 101, he would have done the same thing. And he was holding up an electric drill bit. And he would say, nobody in the history of Home Depot, Lowe's, insert hardware store here, ever went to the store to buy the drill bit. We all know what they went to buy. They went to buy the hole, right? And Seth Godin would go, well, they didn't really go to buy the hole. Seth Godin, the marketing genius, would say they needed the hole in the wall so they could hang the plaque on the wall or the piece of art to make themselves, make their wife or husband happy, right? So that was the outcome. And then Donald Miller, one of my favorite authors as well, of StoryBrand, would say, well, they didn't really go to buy the hole or to hang the thing on the wall. We actually all descended from cavemen, and we know if we don't fit in a community, we're going to get eaten by a tiger. So I need to hang the thing on the wall so I have a community and I don't die. Here's the point to my friends in sales. It doesn't matter whether your customer went to the store to get a hole It doesn't matter whether they went to the store to look good to their spouse or to avoid getting eaten by a tiger. The whole point of this is buyers are not actually buying your products and services. So I would say to my sales friends, stop leading with your products and services and start talking about what your clients actually want, which are the outcomes. Or as Clay Christensen would say, they don't buy your products, they hire them for a job to be done. And I think it's really important for salespeople right now, especially in this dynamic marketplace that we're in, to be able to really look at their clients, ask their clients, what challenges are you facing in your business today? What's going on? What are you aiming at right now? And what are you looking for? Because that's going to give you the clues to what's top of mind to them. It's actually going to get their attention, and then it's going to be a springboard for having that sales conversation around something that's meaningful. And so I would say, with my marketing hat on, to my sales friends, remember, they don't buy the products, they buy the outcomes. So lead with the outcomes, talk about the outcomes your clients want, and you're going to see a lot more success.
So to push back a little bit, yeah, we know that, right? Mm-hmm. We've been told this forever. What's your sense of why we keep having to beat this drum that we're still not doing that? The salespeople are still, and I would argue that even marketing people aren't doing this. They're all features and benefits as well, right? So what's your sense of how do we finally get people to start doing this stuff?
Well, of course, common sense is not usually common practice. And I think that, I think hopefully we got a wake up call in the last couple of years on this, Bryan. And, the pandemic was a wake up call for a lot of organizations. And what they began to realize was, well, let's take the tech industry, one industry I'm very familiar with. The tech industry before the pandemic, the market research firm Gartner would survey clients and say, what outcomes are you looking for? And pre-pandemic, they would say, we want scalability. We want to be able to ramp up and grow faster. Well, once the pandemic hit, if that was your marketing message, if that was your sales message, you called and said, hey, Bryan, I want to meet with you to talk to you about how you can ramp your business up and scale faster. That would have been a massive disconnect. Little aside, by the way, how many companies forgot to change their nurturing emails when the pandemic began? And we're sending out these emails around, in today's world where companies are growing rapidly, blah, blah. You're like, whoa. So we realized when the pandemic started, we had to pivot, word of the year for 2020, and we had to pivot our message around redundancy, resiliency, remote work, and all of that. Well, we learned that lesson. I think most salespeople learn that lesson either by doing that or learn the hard way in 2020, that we've got to adjust our message for the times. Well, guess what? The times, they are changing. They're going to continue to change. They're always changing. So we've come out, as we're recording this in mid 2022. Now, we've got supply chain issues. We've got price increases. We've got inflation. We've got global instability, all of these things that are dramatically affecting and are top of mind, right? And salespeople want attention. They're dramatically affecting and they're top of mind our clients and prospects. So, it's common sense to say, if I want to get someone's attention, if I want to get an appointment with somebody, I need to be talking to them about something that's top of mind. Why is that not more common? It's a really good question. I think a lot of times salespeople, one of the biggest gaps in the sales profession, I'm going to speak to my B2B friends, is, and also B2B sales leaders, is there is a deficiency in business acumen inside the sales profession, in terms of, we know a lot about our products, but on average, my experience has been sales professionals don't spend as much time or know as much as they could or need to about business itself and how it works and how specifically their clients' businesses run. And ultimately, we throw around a lot of adjectives in sales and marketing departments about enhancing profitability and improving competitive advantage and streamlining operations. but we throw a lot of those words around without really understanding underneath the surface of, okay, well, what does that really mean for our clients? And, how can we build the bridge from our product or service to the outcome our clients want?
Well, let's hit that right there. Let's go into more of the tactics. Okay, we all know, we all agree, hopefully by this point, that we have to do the outcomes, focus on the outcomes. What's the solution that you're going to solve? And here's an even more curious thing that I find, Darrell, is that most organizations can't tell you what they do. It's a really curious thing. Whenever you say, hey, what do you do? They go into a lot of, well, here's how we do it, or right. Here's different segments, but they don't, or what we do, the 1, 2, 3 steps, but what they don't do is tell you what problem they solve. So can you give any practical advice, tactical advice of how do you really identify what the outcome is that you do or that you solve for?
Yeah, on one level, it's actually super simple. And that is you talk to your best clients. Right. So, it is, and look, my marketing friends that are listening in, you're not off the hook on this, because salespeople, meet with your current clients, especially your best clients, your ideal clients, your top 10 or whatever that is for you as a sales professional. Meet with them on a regular basis, and of course, update them on how you're performing if you're doing quarterly business review and all of that. But make sure to insert questions of, hey, I'm curious, what's going on in your business right now? In Selling from the Heart, when we're training sales professionals in the art of authentic prospecting, we would say, let's prospect with insight. So you might ask an insight question that would begin with a signal like, I'm curious. Well, that immediately tells someone you're about to ask them a question, right? I'm curious. And then bring an insight. I'm curious right now with sales turnover averaging 3x the average turnover in the rest of the business world, how that's affecting your sales team, right? So now I'm going to ask a question based on an insight, and I'm going to listen. And so if I go into my current client base, I know some things about the world right now that are pretty obvious. There's a supply chain problem, there's inflation. And I'll just be able to say, hey, Bryan, I'm curious, how's this supply chain thing affecting you guys right now? Like, what's that look like for you? Because what's going to happen in that is you start peeling the onion back a few layers. And people like to talk about this stuff, by the way. Dale Carnegie said people's favorite sound in the world to anyone is their own name. The second favorite thing they like to talk about is their own business. So when you start talking to your clients about their business, usually they're very open. I'm curious how this is affecting you. And as you start unpacking, some of these big macro issues down into your client base, they're actually going to give you the nuance to how it's affecting them and their business. And they're going to give you even the specific words to say to be able to go out and have that conversation now as salespeople with your prospects. Marketing's the same way. Marketing, I say marketing's main role, I believe, or at least first role, should be talking to current clients, whether that's doing case study interviews or success story videos or whatever. And the purpose of that is, yes, to create some great, powerful marketing material, but also to become informed as to what's going on right now and what to say in this season that's actually going to work. And so I think the best and fastest way to get a finger on the pulse of what's going on with outcomes your clients want is to actually just talk to your best clients. And, when you do that as a sales professional and a marketing professional, I believe that's some of your highest leverage time, because you immediately upgrade your ability to have a conversation with, to communicate with your prospects when you do that.
Yeah, and it's using their language as opposed to marketing jargon, or using their language as opposed to technical jargon. Now, before we don't pivot off of this, one other last thought I had on this is, how often are we changing up that message? Or maybe a better way of asking that is, what are the identifiers that it is time to switch up the message?
Yeah, I have a suspicion that we need to be doing it way more often than we think. And Here's why. The world is changing rapidly. And I think, I can look back over personally my 3 decades in the sales and marketing world and identify, maybe it's just getting older, but it seems like things are changing a lot quicker now than they were, say, 20 years ago. And what that means is, I think there's a lot of potential first mover advantage for sales and marketing teams that go out and really have their ear to the ground, and can pivot their message quickly. Look, your product and service doesn't necessarily change. You're still selling the same product. Just like tech company was selling a SaaS product before the pandemic, they were selling it during, and they were selling it, now, air quotes, around after the pandemic. And the product was probably the same, but the outcomes their clients wanted, and therefore probably the features and different aspects of the product that the conversation ended up focusing around were different. So you go, okay, well, if I want to get competitive advantage and I want to get a first mover advantage, if you will, in the marketplace, the beautiful thing is you can always get a first mover advantage. You don't have to be a brand new company in a new space to get a first mover advantage. You can always get a first mover advantage when you identify a new outcome or a new nuance on an outcome that your clients or best clients want. And that's, how often should you pivot the message? I would say as often as you can. And in the sense that right now, you look and you go, okay, well, what's tomorrow's problem going to be? I have no idea, right? I love futurism and all that kind of stuff. I could maybe guess, but the problem that we're going to have, 6 months or a year from now, if I can be the one listening to my clients and understanding, just go back, let's rewind a little bit and say, if you were on the front, let's say you're in an industry that was highly affected by the supply chain crisis. And quite frankly, who hasn't been? I mean, we've all been affected. If you were on the front edge of watching that unfold and you had your ear to the ground, you're talking to your clients, wouldn't it have been beneficial? And that was the top of mind thing, right? It's what everyone wanted to talk about. Wouldn't it have been beneficial if you could have jumped on that faster? And I think the answer for most companies is, yeah, man, if we could have jumped on that faster, from a marketing message standpoint and from a sales conversation standpoint, we probably could have, gotten more impact out of it. And from a more altruistic standpoint, we probably could have helped more people, because we would have been able to get through to them because they're thinking, what are we going to do about the supply chain crisis?
Yeah. And then the other side of that is, I would think that we in sales, we in marketing need to watch what's going on in the marketplace, watch what trends are coming down the path, because you're going to be able to filter through, connect the dots much better than what others are. And that's where we're bringing those commercial insights. That's where we can set apart. Whenever we do reach out to somebody, whether through phone or email, it's having that commercial insight that's going to catch their attention, go, well, that's curious. In reality, and you said this a little bit earlier, Darrell, a lot of times it's simply repackaging what it is that's going to be relevant to them right now. It's not wholesale changing your offering. You can't do that. It's simply, hey, look at it from this perspective, whereas last week it was from this perspective. So just switching that up slightly is, I think, what would be required, right?
Yeah. And I think making this part of your culture. And I think, sales, I've watched sales teams that have integrated, for example, they've realized, you know what, we need to do more cross-selling and we need better relationships with our clients. So one of the simple tactics they integrate is a quarterly business review. And, so they go in and done correctly. And by correctly, I mean, done with talking about their business and not just yourself. Those become really good, consistent touch points with current clients to have your ears to the ground. And I think for organizations, when there's quarterly business reviews, I think it's a great idea for marketing to come along with some of those, or with permission, listen to some of those recordings, because that's where you get the gold nuggets and the signals on this. And, we live in a world where it's really easy for sales and marketing and everybody to kind of wring their hands and go, we're changing is so frustrating, and all that stuff. But if we can start to see that change as an opportunity to jump on understanding what the implications of that change are going to be, offering commercial insight and connecting that back to our products and services in support of helping our clients achieve their outcomes, all this change gives us repeated continual outcomes for first mover advantage and developing a competitive strategic advantage in the marketplace on a regular basis. So I say, keep the change coming, right? Because most companies are going to remain flat-footed in terms of we're just sticking with our old message, or we're using our marketing mush of adjectives around productivity, efficiency, and blah, 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 or we're just simply talking about our product. And the ones that can jump on the opportunity to talk about the current outcomes in the language of their clients are going to be the ones that really drive success moving forward, I believe.
Yeah. So instead of asking what should sales, put you on your sales hat and talk to marketing, because everything that you said, I think, needs to be done in both sales and marketing. Is it fair enough to say that point?
Yeah. And I think there's so many different, it's important for sales and marketing to work together. I think we can all agree. I think we can also agree that they don't most of the time. I mean, let's just be honest. That's why I wrote a book about sales and marketing alignment. But I think one of the key ways that sales and marketing can align is by talking together with current clients. And then what you're able to do is you're able to walk into your prospects. I love the way Anthony Iannarino frames this in his new book, Elite Sales Strategies. He says, we were all trained to walk into our clients back in the day and go, what keeps you up at night? What challenges are you facing in your business? What Anthony says, and I wholeheartedly agree with, is you should already know what challenges they're facing in your business. How do you know? Talk to your current clients. Then you're able to go in and, rather than ask, some brutal discovery process like every other sales rep, get in line, right? Instead say, hey, we're continually talking with our current clients in this space. These are the challenges they're telling us about. Would you like an executive briefing on some strategies that we found to help address this problem and get this outcome? So now we're truly walking in, instead of, tell me your pain, which is, smacks of commission breath to the core, as we like to say it, selling from the heart. And we're saying, hey, let's do our due diligence with our customers. Let's ask them about their business. And then let's take that, combine it with what we know, and come to the market with actual commercial insight that's current and relevant and hot off the press. And I think, you ask how often should you change that message? One way to look at it is, if you're doing quarterly business reviews with your clients and you're listening quarterly to their needs, then you should be able to slightly change or dramatically change your commercial insights once a quarter, and be able to go out and deliver a quarterly briefing.
That was kind of my mindset too, because so much of business, so much of life changes on a quarterly basis. I was thinking quarterly would likely be a good time to update, not wholesale change, but that seems to have enough time that you can test it and make small iterations, but a long enough period of time that you can make a big enough change in the end of that quarter to that you can stay relevant or stay ahead of it. So I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Now, let's jump on that for a second, though, because I want to just think about this. This is a great line of conversation here, because marketing then can take that, right? So marketing, we've got to wear that marketing hat and go, what are we going to talk about now? What blog article are we going to write? What lead magnet are we going to put together? And so by marketing participating in those conversations with current clients, now marketing is able to go, okay, in this next quarter along that topic line, what are 12 blog articles we could produce? What are, 12 podcast topics we could address? What experts could we bring in? What lead magnet could we put together? And so this becomes a evergreen way to keep the commercial insights relevant and fresh, and escape, the blah, blah, blah of most marketing out there. And I really like, and I think the best thing we can do just to wrap this section up, is just keep our ear to the ground with our current clients and always be adapting our message based on the nuances of the outcomes that they want.
Yeah, and so let's talk through that. So how do we adapt the team? So we're let's say a $3-5 million organization, maybe up to a $10 million organization. We have a fledgling sales team. Maybe we're moving from a founder-led sales group to more of a robust salesperson or sales group rather. We are not only looking at inbound, but also outbound. So we're doing omni-channel type prospecting. So walk me through, is that where this revenue growth engine comes into play? And it seemed like there was maybe an outline or a methodology that we should know about.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is where I had this epiphany moment, Bryan. I actually, this may come as a shock to a lot of people, but despite all the advice of my business coaches and virtually every book I've ever read on success, I actually mow my own lawn. And the reason I mow my lawn, you laugh, and I can see it right out.
I'm not letting my wife listen to this.
No, you know, I understand you should delegate that and delegate to elevate and all of that. However, what I like about mowing my lawn is, unlike a lot of the work that I do in helping clients develop and execute growth strategies and training salespeople, when I mow my lawn, I see immediate results, the straight lines, the grass, and best of all, while I'm doing it, I get to listen to wonderful podcasts like this one. So anyhow, I'm mowing my lawn one day, and I'm thinking about a conference I'm about to speak at. And I'm following Marcus Sheridan at this conference, which that's big shoes to fill. And They Ask, You Answer, phenomenal book, huge fan. And I've got marketing people in the room. I got sales people in the room. And I'm like, what am I going to say to this group? Right? Usually I talk to marketing people or I talk to salespeople, and now they're all in there together. What am I going to say? And what I realized while I was mowing my lawn, as I'm puttering across these nice, beautiful, straight green rows, is I realized I'm looking at my driveway and I see my car is in the driveway. And I realized my lawnmower has an engine and my car has an engine. Now, they both have engines. If I was to drive from where I am right now to where you live, I could do that in my lawnmower. It would just take me a lot of time to get there, and there would be a lot of mockery, and I might actually die on the freeway. You know, it wouldn't be good, but it would be doable. I'd much rather get in my car. My lawnmower, I found out, has 2 cylinders and generates 24 horsepower. And my car has 8 cylinders and generates 420 horsepower. So I'd much rather, if I want to accelerate, I need more cylinders and more horsepower. And that's when I realized every business has a growth engine. You got to where you are today. Maybe it was the founder, you know, that still has the sales hat on. However you got to where you are, you have a growth engine. But I noticed a lot of businesses are like an engine that's not running on all cylinders. And the more cylinders we can add, the more marketing and sales processes, for my Canadian friends, that are dedicated to driving net new revenue and cross-sell revenue, sell more to new clients, sell more to your current clients. The more cylinders we can have that engine, the faster the business accelerates. And so revenue growth engine was put together with a mindset of going, okay, what are all the things that would need to be in place for a business to accelerate growth? What are the things that need to be in place from a marketing standpoint and from a sales standpoint? And specifically, thinking in terms of scaling, how could those be implemented as repeatable processes inside the business and not just random acts of marketing, as my friend Jennifer Zick likes to say, or, you know, random acts of selling? and how can we take those and make those repeatable, scalable processes? So I like to look at a business from the standpoint of, okay, is this a 2-cylinder business? Is this a 4-cylinder? Is this a 12-cylinder? You know, what kind of horsepower is here? And the whole goal of Revenue Growth Engine was to give a template that you could lay over your business and go, okay, we're doing great here, but we have a massive gap here. And if we filled that, maybe we could get this thing growing and scaling faster.
Okay, so why don't you lay out, what's that template look like? Is it like 3 steps? Is it 1,000,000 steps? What's that thing look like?
Well, first of all, if your listeners want to see the template, just text the word revenue to 21,000, and that'll get you through to our free resources, which includes the Revenue Growth Engine map and also access to a free copy of the Revenue Growth Engine book.
Nice.
But if I can unpack it, the first thing is the flywheels of the engine. And so this really gets down to our goals. And what I realized while I was putting all this together is that there's really only two ways to grow revenue. We either get net new business, go out and land a new deal, new customer, new logo, ring the bell, or we cross-sell more to our current clients. Those are really, if you think about it, the only two ways to grow revenue. You may go, well, we're going to acquire a company. Great. You better continue getting net new business and you better cross-sell more to those clients. So what I've discovered, Bryan, is that most businesses are usually good at one or the other. They're usually either lean to being really good at going out and grabbing net new, ringing the bell and, landing the deal, or they're really good at managing those client relationships and growing the wallet share inside those client relationships. Most businesses are good at one or the other. When you get good at both at the same time, modest growth in net new business combined with modest growth in cross-sell revenue yields exponential growth for the business. So what I like to say is if you're good at net new business, but you're not good at cross-sell, which seems to be true for about 70% of the businesses we work with, keep doing what you're doing on net new and put processes in place to take, that once you get the deal, as Mark Hunter says, you don't close a deal, you open a relationship. Once that relationship is open, put processes in place to cross-sell to maximize the value you're delivering. Flip side, if you're really good at managing client relationships, but you haven't seen a new deal in a long time, keep managing your client relationships and growing, but put processes in for net new business. And so that is the flywheel of the engine, is net new and cross-sell, and the theory of exponential growth, or the law of exponential growth. And when we get both of those running at the same time, modest growth becomes exponential. It's interesting, Bryan, I was just preparing for revenue growth strategy workshop that I'm doing in a couple of days for a great company. And they've been doing really well at net new growth. They're doing extremely well. But when we added in a modest amount of cross-sell revenue growth, all of a sudden their goal, their it's hockey stick, right? You get the old hockey stick. Once again, from my Canadian friends, the hockey stick growth comes into play. And so that, looking at your engine, looking at your company in terms of, okay, what do we have? What processes do we have in place for net new? What processes do we have in place for cross-sell? And if we're weak in one of those areas, that probably gives you a pretty good idea where you could focus. Modest growth of 12 to 13% in net new, your total number of customers, along with modest growth of 12 to 13% per year in cross-sell, which is measured by your revenue per customer. Get both of those going at the same time, you double revenue in less than 36 months organically. And it's really cool to see what's possible when both of those are running at the same time.
Yeah, so to grow 36 months, to double revenue in 36 months, that's a massive growth. And if you don't have good systems and processes in place, that if you're growing that quickly, you probably really need to reinvent or restructure your organization once every 90 days just to keep up with that growth, if not a touch sooner. So I would think if you're having that much growth, you really need to know all of the good organizational structures, from sales and marketing to operations, getting it out the door, making sure our customers are super happy, and then the finance side that we can keep up, because the biggest thing about growth sucks cash. You better keep an eye on that bottom line.
Yeah, which is another another part of the revenue growth engine as well. And by the way, just to comment on that for another moment, if all your growth's on net new and you've got to hit, say a 30% year over year target, you're adding a ton of new customers and onboarding a lot of people, that really taxes an organizational infrastructure. If you're able to say, let's just get a modest number of new clients and let's get a modest increase in our revenue per client by putting cross-sell processes in place, depending on your organization, overall, my experience has been if you can keep both of those going at the same time, but make them modest, you can create manageable growth. And you're absolutely right. A company runs danger when they outrun their capacity to deliver. And that's why I like this combination of net new and cross-sell revenue growth, is usually once you've got a client relationship established, putting more revenue and more product or offerings into that relationship is usually easier than onboarding a new client, which usually takes a lot of work. So anyhow, the other point of this, other part of the engine, the flywheel, is net new and cross-sell. But the driver of all of it, right in the middle of the engine, is your client, and understanding who your ideal clients are. And this is really important as well when it comes to taxing or not taxing your operational capacity. Vilfredo Pareto was the great Italian economist that made this aha moment one day. They called Pareto's principle, that he named after himself, or someone named it after him, that 20% or 80% of the results are coming from 20% of the effort. And it's really, I mean, you see this all over the world, but you certainly see this in companies. And if you look and if you've got 1,000 clients or customers and you scrape off the top 20% and add up the revenue, I can just about guarantee you that you're going to find the top 20% of your clients are delivering the vast majority, 80%, sometimes more, of your revenue. I've seen this happen over and over again. So what I say is, and not only that, those types of clients typically not only are delivering larger chunks of revenue, oftentimes we find that they're also better aligned with the company in terms of their cultural fit, their values. They actually enjoy doing business with them. I love asking people, who are your favorite clients and what do you like about working with them? We get that kind of qualitative description going. And then you start to look at the numbers and realize that either those clients are buying more than the other clients, or they could be. And so I think the revenue growth engine, while a lot of companies in their early days will take an order from anyone that can fog a mirror, or as we used to say back in the early days of sales, press hard, the fourth copy is yours. As a company matures, I think a very smart thing to do is go, who are our favorite clients? Who are our best fit clients? The ones that align with our values, our culture as a company. They're going to stick around. They give us references. They pay on time. They also have the ability to buy everything that we offer. So they have good revenue potential. Or if we were an investment firm, we would say that client's got a good yield on our efforts for those clients. And that's where, when you look at scaling your business, as you get out of those early days and you're in that now in the 5 to 10 million or whatever that looks like for you, I think it's very important at that iteration of your company to clearly understand who your ideal clients are. So you can go get more of them, and so you can maximize your revenue per client. All kinds of reasons, but the operations one is a big one, because now you're focusing your resources on high yield clients.
It's interesting. There was a study way back in the day by the Boston Consulting Group, and they suggest it's even worse than that, that that Pareto principle, that top 20% is pushing off 150% of your revenue. The bottom takes so much of your revenue, you're actually at a loss with those ones. That's where you end up with 100% of revenue. And so if you can identify those, and I'm curious, so summing this up so far, what we talked about is identify your goals, then figure out, and those goals are going to be, are you going to sell more net new or more cross-sell upsell? And then you're going to want to do a both and approach, and identifying your ICP, and then back to what we were talking about earlier, that sales and marketing approach of what are the outcomes that need to get done. And that's going to be the personas to speak to that ICP about the outcomes from their perspective through that commercial insight to be able to get that done. So if we do all that, what else should we need to do? Because my guess is there would have to be, identifying the right people, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. What else are we going to do after that?
Well, you're absolutely right. So once you understand that ideal client, you understand who the decision makers and influencers are in that client. We know in the B2B space that there are multiple decision makers and influencers. Just had a phenomenal conversation with Brent Adamson, Challenger Sale, on our Selling from the Heart podcast that'll come out this summer. And, they found out there were 5.4 decision makers on average in a B2B transaction. That number's higher now. But
it's more than doubled, hasn't it?
It's over 10 in a lot of industries. It's really interesting. Now, once again, you look at that and go, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And or you can look at that and go, what a great opportunity. We have 10 entry points into an account now when we're prospecting. But it's important, talked about those outcomes, right? The big outcomes, to then understand, well, what does that mean in the world of a CFO? What does that mean in the world of a HR director? What does that mean in whomever you're selling to? And so when we say personas, my marketing friends, we like to do personas around, CFO Charlie is an average of 56.2 years old. He reads the Atlantic magazine, has an MBA from Wharton, and is, likes to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
those are great demographic things. That's great. I don't stop doing that. That's great for CFO Charlie. But what I really want to know for CFO Charlie is in, this specific year or quarter, what's top of mind to him or her? What are the outcomes they want? So make sure those personas have some meat to them, that they're not just, nice pictures of people. That's really good to know the demographics, but also get down to the actual business side of things. So you can offer commercial insights and of course to who they are. But so ideal client profile, decision makers and influencers, those personas are really important. The next part of the revenue growth engine, before we get to the actual sales and marketing processes. And once again, if you want to deep dive into this, just grab a copy of Revenue Growth Engine, just text the word revenue to 21,000 or just Google Revenue Growth Engine. But before we get down to the actual processes, the question is, how do you figure out what processes need to be put in place? And I figured my contention, my theory, and actually we've seen this played in practice, so it's more than theory, is one of the best ways to do this is to think from the perspective of the client. And there's a whole discipline called customer experience that our operations friends and our client success friends know a lot about, that I believe can benefit sales and marketing tremendously. Customer experience says, okay, through the lens of the customer, through the eyes of the customer, what happens from the time someone first encounters your company all the way through that decision-making process to the first order, all the way through their life cycle as a customer. We might, in the marketing world, call that, or sales world, call it the buyer's journey and the customer life cycle. That's great, but I want to look at it through the customer's lens. What happens at each stage? What are the goals to move between the stages? Like, how are we trying to move? What are the goals to get to the next stage? And most importantly, where's the friction and where's the motivation as people move between each stage? And when we get a group of people together, I love doing this. I'm doing this a couple days this week with a client. We'll map out that entire client experience, identify the motivation and friction, and then we'll go, okay, sales, what could be done to make this client experience more frictionless? Marketing, what could you do, not just to generate a lead at the beginning, but to support the whole process moving forward? And operations, they'll be in the room as well, because a lot of the revenue potential is a cross-sell revenue once somebody's a client. So when you look at customer experience, that's when you have the opportunity to really create something special and invent sales and marketing processes that are actually going to help you move your business forward.
Yeah. And getting that, and I couch it as buyer's journey, right? Making sure that buyer's journey is frictionless as possible, which goes to that identifying the customer experience. So I love that as well. But because we're quickly running out of time here, what are maybe the last couple of pieces that we need to build out this revenue growth engine?
Well, the last piece is process. And here's why I think this is so critical. I work with a lot of companies that run very efficiently using systems like the Entrepreneur's Operating System from the book Traction, for example. And Gino Wickman is a massive believer in processes that are FBA'd, followed by all, right? And you look at a business and HR has a process, shipping and receiving has processes, hopefully finance has a process. But when you get to marketing and sales departments, it's like the Wild West in most companies, right? It's like sales teams are literally like the Wild West, like a bunch of gunslingers hanging outside the saloon, flipping a coin while a tumbleweed blows by. And the sales manager says, y'all go sell something. And we wonder why we try to onboard new salespeople and they fail. There's no process. It's a free for all. So what can you do to create process? And I would say kick it up a level to create playbooks, which is processes plus tools plus talk tracks, and all the things that you need to execute that process. Marketing, we don't get away with anything here either, because a lot of marketing is very random. I quoted Jennifer Zick earlier, random acts of marketing, right? Oh, let's run an event. Let's do blah, blah, blah. Let's do this shiny object. With all of this understanding of how you want to grow your business, who you want to sell to, your ideal client profile and their experience, that's where it's really important to go, let's create documented processes. Are they going to be perfect? No, but they'll be improvable. Once you have a process in place, you can tweak it. So this is where we see a lot of companies, they've scaled up to a certain point, somewhere in the single digits of millions in revenue, and they realize they're plateaued and they're stuck. And maybe this founder wants to take that hat off. Yeah. And they can't seem to, they hire a sales rep or two and they don't stick. And then they go, I guess that doesn't work. Where that company needs to go is in creating those processes as core processes, and making sure that gets documented, backed with tools, we call it a playbook, so you can move forward. And at that point, those kind of become the cylinders, the engine. If you can think about every time you get a good playbook put in place, now that you're adding cylinders to your engine, and now you give yourself the ability to scale.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, this, we follow Traction, the entrepreneurial operating system here. And I'm not sure if you know this book right here, but so this is Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. And if Mike's you look awesome. If you look at chapter 5, step 4, to go along with what Darrell's talking about with that process implementation, that allows you to get part of that process into playbook, into onboarding, into training, because your onboarding of net new hires is going to be part of that. And so that's so critically important. All right. So to sum this up, to make sure that I have this, we identify our goals, how we're going to reach those goals, whether mostly through net or mostly through cross-sell, upsell. Ideally, it's a little bit of both. And you said moderately is somewhere between 10 to 15%, or what's an ideal number that we're looking to grow there?
Well, it depends on the company, but 10 to 15% growth in each one of those areas will yield doubling of revenue in, less than 36 months. So that's where I look and I call that an aggressive but realistic goal. When you add them up, you go, that's pretty aggressive. But when you realize, could we do 12, 15% growth in customer base? I hope so.
Yeah.
Could we do 12 to 15% growth in revenue per client by bringing on more ideal clients and cross-selling more to them? I hope so. And that's where you go, wow, modest growth in each of these areas yields exponential growth overall. And that gets me excited.
Yeah. And my sense is then you're going to have more and more of your ideals, because a lot of times if you're cross-selling, upselling, you're going to increase your number of introductions and referrals from your current happy customers, because you're spending so much time with them. So it's going to be less cold calling. Your customer acquisition cost is going to go down. So there's nothing but good that's coming out of this. Okay. So we identify how we're going to get that 10 to 15, 10 to 20% growth off of each segment. That's going to be a better improvement of identifying that ideal customer profile. And whenever we're talking our personas, it's identifying that emotional compelling reason why they're going to change their behavior to do something new with you. So that gets into that ICP and personas. And then we're going to make sure that we defrictionalize through a good customer experience journey, that good buyer's journey, and then make sure that we put everything down in a system, process, and a playbook to onboard and train up people, and then maybe tweaking every quarter or so, always be improving, but make sure at least once a quarter we're making sure that this thing is still valid. Is that a good summary of what we hit there?
100%. And that's where, once that engine's in place, now you can performance enhance your engine, right? You can tweak and optimize and fine tune and change the oil and all of those things, to use that analogy. So this is the mindset, though, is to say, how do I take, as we're scaling the company up, how do I build an engine that's going to allow me to get to where I want to go tomorrow? You may have had an engine that was, big enough to get you to where you are today, but it's kind of like, you got a bigger boat now. You need a bigger truck to pull it. So the more you can upgrade your growth engine and your capacity there, the faster and you're going to be able to scale.
Yeah, and one of the things, because you mentioned it earlier, I was talking with a gentleman earlier today, running an exploratory call with him, and he said, "Yeah, it turned over 2 salespeople." Yeah, okay. Well, it's because none of this was here. If you don't have anything here, it's really easy to turn over your salesperson. It's also really easy to turn over your salesperson because if you haven't done this stuff, you can't, you have ICP, that ideal customer profile, but you also have an ICP, that ideal candidate profile. And if you haven't, if you haven't identified this, you're not going to be able to identify the picture of that ideal candidate profile to be able to get a good, robust team to be able to do this, because cross-sell, upsell is massively different skill set than net new hunting. And so you're likely going to have 2 teams. And then, oh, by the way, if you put customer success in there, slightly different, right? More operational as opposed to relational and all that good stuff. And then depending on the size of your organization, you're really going to have to determine, well, how much do I want to split this out? And is good enough until I can get specialists within each one of these. And that goes back to your idea of goal setting, of building this thing out to know what you want to be able to reverse engineer it. So there's a lot of good stuff there.
Awesome. Absolutely. And this is, here's the beautiful thing about this. When companies grow, they're able to expand their impact. And, wherever you are right now in your business, whether you're just starting out or whether you're trying to scale and frustrated, or whether you're a large business and you go, we're doing great, we want to continue to grow, I just want to cheer you on. Let's we say at the end of the revenue growth podcast, every episode, let's get growing. Seriously, let's get growing, because when we grow, we're able to create impact. We're creating jobs, meaningful work for new people. Most of the companies we get to work with are generous in their communities, and they're investing back into solve the world's problems. And we need that right now. So I'm passionate about seeing companies upgrade their revenue growth engine, because when they do, they're able to have more impact. And so all of this, I want, as we wrap up, I just want to say I'm cheering you on. I'm cheering you on. Anything you can do to grow right now, let's get growing. We were in survival mode during the pandemic for a lot of reasons. We've come into this new season of crazy stuff with supply chains and price increases and global instability. And there's this temptation for many people to put their heads in the sand and go, okay, we'll just survive this. And I want to say, no, let's grow. Let's get growing. Let's get out there. Let's get it done. And the things that you're talking about on this podcast, the things we've talked about today in this episode, are all geared around helping companies increase their impact. And so for that, I want to say thank you, Bryan, for all that you're doing here at the podcast and all that you're doing to equip business people to grow, because I think it's great work.
Well, I appreciate that. And so our mission, whenever we started up our organization, EBS Growth, our mission is to help communities thrive through entrepreneurship, right? And that's what I liked about yours, is your mission is to help communities to thrive from charitable entrepreneurship. So money's only good for the good that it can do. So let's make a lot of it and do a lot of good. So let's tie this down then. Let's ask rapid fire here. When you see people trying to transition to this, they go, yeah, I got it. I've heard this before, which, by the way, unfortunately, there's nothing new under the sun. So if you heard it before, let's do something. So let's talk about that. What are the biggest challenges that you see people making whenever they try to transition into doing this, following this process? What would you say, hey, don't do this because it's going to mess you up?
I would say zoom out. It's easy to zoom in. There's a lot of shiny objects out there right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of new,
hey, look at that new technology,
platforms and sales and marketing technologies. All this stuff's cool, by the way. I'm a nerd. I love all that stuff. But it's really easy to not see the forest through the trees. That's why I say zoom out, and look at these bigger issues of your net new and cross sell goals, your ideal client profile and the message, all those things. And then you've got something that you can then apply. And so just avoid the trap of getting caught in the latest trend or the latest shiny object, and and zoom out and see the big picture. It's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's wise. Compete against yourself. Don't compare yourself to others and try to do what they're doing, because it might be right for them and absolutely wrong for you.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Now, how about biggest suggestions and around, let's say for scaling the business, if there's one thing that you're going to suggest to a person to be able to, an organization to be able to scale, what's one scaling strategy or tactic that you might suggest?
I would say take cross-selling seriously. So many organizations, when you go in, I know you've seen this, we see this all the time. You go in and you look at their business model and you look at their opportunity to sell more to their current clients, and you realize you could never bring on another client and triple the size of this business. And, and that happens. I mean, I've got sales in my DNA. I like to say I'm a recovering sales professional. I'm down to counseling twice a month. It's going pretty
Congratulations.
Well. Yeah, the tick's slowly going away, but the temptation is to land a deal and ignore it. And reality, what we need to do is we need to go in and invest in those. And Selling from the Heart, our most popular course, is authentic client management. And the reason is companies are beginning to wake up to the reality that when they take care of their current clients and they communicate with them and they keep listening to them, there's continual opportunity to grow. And so you can land an ideal client, but if you don't expand it, what's the point? So I would say don't ignore cross-sell, like start to take that seriously. So many people kind of just gloss that over. And I think when you do that, you miss a significant chunk of revenue opportunity.
And you miss a significant chance to help those people. I mean, the customer acquisition cost is the most on net new. You might as well help them out in return to help your profit.
That's absolutely right. And when I look at that, I believe that, we need to deliver our best and highest value. Jay Abraham is my favorite marketing author. And Jay would say, you have like a moral obligation to your clients to deliver the best and the highest value. That means going back and communicating and, all of that. And I think a lot of salespeople are either too focused on net new or just too scared something's going to go wrong to actually go back and have that conversation. But it's not just sales, it's sales, marketing, and operations working together to maximize the value of that client. And when you get that going and you get out of that mindset of just ringing the bell for a new order, a new client, that cross sell is the key to growth. And this is something I think we're seeing a lot more companies starting to get serious about that. And I think that's a really good thing.
Well, how about books that you might recommend, podcast guides for people to get up to snuff on this, other than Revenue Growth Engine? And they should text what to 2100?
Text revenue to 21,000 or
21,000. Shoot, there's off by a zero.
No, it's all good. We'll actually send, if you're listening to the podcast and you do that on the website, if you pay just shipping and handling, I'll send you a book. We'll autograph it and send it out. I really want to help generous companies grow their business. But books, I'm a Michalowicz fan, but the biggest, I think my favorite book by him is called The Pumpkin Plan. Okay, and I love The Pumpkin Plan because it's on how to grow ideal clients. It's on how to grow big pumpkins. And to your point earlier, he was saying, you probably need to fire 20% of your clients on a given year. He gives you a graceful way to do that, but really focusing your business in on how can we grow these client relationships. I love Mike Michalowicz's work. And I'm also really digging, I'm a sales junkie with Selling from the Heart. We get to talk to lots of sales authors on that podcast, which is so fun. But Anthony Iannarino's new book, Elite Sales Strategies, that just came out, is pure gold. I've been I'm wearing out a highlighter on this. Anthony, if you hear this podcast, I'm a fan. But I first heard Anthony talk about this when we were at the Outbound conference last year, and it was so brilliant. I'm so glad he put this into a book. So Anthony Iannarino elite sales strategies, becoming one up, creating value, and becoming truly consultative. Bingo book, right on point. And so I'm just finishing that one up right now. And I think it's fantastic.
Great. Thanks. We'll have to check that one out. I've not seen that one yet. Now, how about the future trends? What are you seeing come down the pike where you're going, oh my gosh, this is like, run away, or this is cool, so cool. What do you see coming down the pike?
Yeah, I love this question. And wow, we should do a whole hour on this sometime. So you look at future trends, and I think there's both a runaway and embrace. So I'm really interested and curious to see how artificial intelligence supports us and doesn't consume us. So I think there's a lot of fear in the sales world that artificial intelligence is someday going to, destroy the reality that people buy from people. And by the way, it's an article, not a book, but I think it is really great around the future of sales, was in the last edition of the Harvard Business Review by Brent Adamson on sense making in sales. And what Brent says is our role in sales is in this place where there's like this arms race going on for content, right? Where there's so many companies creating so much good content. We've been doing content marketing now for 15 years. And buyers are thoroughly confused a lot of times by not
exact opposite suggestions.
Well, yeah, and it's not that they're now the cool thing. And I thought this was a really interesting point when I was talking to Brent last week, is he goes, it used to be that 15 years ago that a lot of the content was garbage. So you had to help sort people out, like what's good and what's not. There's a lot of good advice out there, like a lot. And so now buyers are looking at this going, what do I do? Right. And, and I mean, Brent Adamson with Challenger, 10 plus years ago with Matt Dixon said, teach, tailor, and take control, bring commercial insight, and all of that, which is great. But now he's saying, and I think this is a window into the future, is to look and go, okay, how do I now help to make sense of all of this? Yeah. And how do I rise? And this is also what Anthony's book addresses really well, which is understanding that buyers are swamped with information. What ends up happening, and it's been happening for a while, is the biggest competitor now is the status quo. Right. So it's deals just getting stuck in the pipeline because they're paralyzed. And so sense making, which coincidentally is a chapter in Elite Sales Strategies, that Brent Adamson is talking about, to me is one of the latest trends in sales to go, okay, it's not just, it's not going in and uncovering the pain, tell me what keeps you up at night. It's understanding that and understanding the landscape of information that's available to buyers, and then going in and helping them make sense, not only about that information, but helping them make sense so they can build consensus to actually get their sales team, their buying team to go, okay, let's move forward into some, an actual real deal, not, some meaningless pilot, but actually embrace the change. So when it comes to future right now, I'm a sales junkie. And so I love this shift right now in the sales world that I think the sales world is going to have to make, and is starting to make, in terms of this word of sense making and kind of the evolving role of the sales rep. Nice. Hopefully at the same time, AI is doing more of the busy work for us. And I'm fascinated with that, but I could talk about future stuff for the next hour, and I know we're going to run out of time. So I'm going to leave it with sense making. Check out that article by Brent Adamson. You can Google it. It's a fascinating read. Cool.
We'll have to check that out. So, hey, Darrell, who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why should people reach out to you?
Well, absolutely. Anybody that wants to grow should reach out. I love working with, generous, visionary business owners, entrepreneurs, as well as sales leaders and marketing leaders in those companies. LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time. And the good news about having a name, Darrel Amy, which I do wholeheartedly acknowledge is 2 names, and the last name is usually a girl's name. So, but there's only one of me on LinkedIn. So I didn't get the last name Brown or Jones or Smith. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you. And when we do, we've got a lot of free resources we put out there on Revenue Growth Engine. As we talked about earlier, text the word revenue to 21,000 and look for me on the Revenue Growth Podcast with fresh ideas every week.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Darrell. I really appreciate it. So out of this, make sure that we're doing a little bit of cross-selling, upselling with our net new, get about 10 to 15, 10 to 20% each side, have a scalable, sustainable growth off of that, focus on your customers, make gobs and gobs of money, and then be super charitable with it. And that way we can impact communities and help them to thrive. So very exciting stuff. Thanks so much, Darrell. I really appreciate it. And as always, don't just listen. Knowledge for knowledge sake is pointless. Let's knowledge for application's sake. Get this out, share it, thumbs up it, get it out there for everyone else to help communities thrive. Thanks, Darrell.
You're welcome.
See you.